Okay, there's a button on your cell phone. My wife is going to be in shock. But tonight, for the next couple hours, all you have to do is hit it so it says slide to power off, and we're going to spend 2 hours without cell phones. Do you have any idea how... I got to tell you, it's really crazy looking around here and seeing my picture all over. It's very disorienting. Now I understand why everybody looks at me kind of weird. You know what I mean? So we're going to begin our High Holy Day service. People are still coming. They'll be coming in. We know that. Traffic, nobody ever plans on traffic. But we're going to begin our service now with the choir and our High Holy Day chant. No?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say me first.
No. Okay.
שבט אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבט אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבט אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב, שבט אחים גם יחד, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבט אחים גם יחד.
Okay, so I'm going to welcome you in. It's going to be, as we've done the past few years, we have a plethora of rabbis at Beit Shuvah. We're blessed with an amazing group of rabbis. So on my far left is Rabbi Andy Markowitz. And next to him is Rabbi Matt Shapiro. And they are going to, tonight Andy's going to give the sermon and Matt's going to run the service. I'm going to do a little bit. And then tomorrow Matt's going to give the sermon and we're all going to, Andy and I will both run the services. And then on Kol Nidre and Yom Kippur, it's more or less my show because it's one of my favorite days. So that's kind of the lineup. We have, of course, Laura Bagish and the amazing Beit Shuvah Choir. And we have Tony on the piano. And we have the Beit Shuvah Band. That's Glenn and Corwin and Luca and Jonathan. And Our Shaliach Tzibor, the leader of our prayers, is the inimitable, beautiful, amazing, talented, great spirit and light soul Cantor Shira Fox. So we're here again. We were here last year, not here last year, but we were together last year. And I want to thank also Cheryl Wolf for finding this great space. Agape wasn't available, so we were going to go down to the airport Marriott. I drove down there one day to look at the space, and I said, oh no, we are not going to have traffic. We're not doing this. And then Cheryl got on the horn, and she found this place. And so thank you, Cheryl. And to the entire development team that led by Janet Rosenblum, our Director of Advancement, for putting all this together. And we have to thank David Baer and the residents for setting everything up and getting it all together. I'm doing all this now because if I don't do it now, I'll forget later. And up in our control booth up there is Jason Goldberg, who does an amazing job on sound. So we're gathered together again. We're ending one year and we're starting another one. And I was thinking about this beginnings and endings and endings and beginnings. And really, there is no such thing as an end. A lot of us think that there's ends. But really, I think the way the tradition teaches us, with the way we read Torah, with the way we live our lives, that really we're moving from one level of existence to another. So with each year, and we begin, of course, tonight, the Aseret Yemei Tshuva, the 10 days of Tshuva. So for those of you who haven't done your own inventories, your cheshbon and nefesh, get busy. But really, all it is going from one level of existence to the next. So we're leaving 5777, a year that was filled with joy and sorrow, with success and with tribulations. And it really has been a year of great turmoil in the world and in the lives of many of us individuals. We've had to make decisions. Some of them life and death. Some of them, where am I going? Who am I? Some of them, of course, have been in the political realm. It's a scary time in the world. And we come together not to say we have the answers, but really, we come together at this time to move into the new year with a new dedication that says, I'm going to recover the questions. I'm going to make sure that I have the right questions. Because truly, most of us have the right answers to the wrong questions. And this is our time. This is our time to say, what questions were right for me last year that are not correct for me this year? Where am I moving into a new phase of my life, into a new way of being? How am I doing it? And if I say I'm not, I'm going to stay the same, then I have to tell you I feel very, very sorry for you, because then you become stale. Change is the only constant in life. And for people who do not recognize the change and do not move into the change, lean in, as Sheryl Sandberg says, you become existers, not human beings. So in Beit Shuva's life in 5778, we're going into newness. We have a new executive director, Mrs. Haley Levy. And we're moving forward. That's the great challenge that all of us have right now. We're not ending 57, 77 and saying, oh, goodbye, it's done, blah, blah, blah. We're taking everything we've learned in the past year and we're going to move it forward. We're going to make it that much better, one grain of sand better this year. And then, and only then, can we say that we're actually celebrating and engaging in both the Jewish tradition and in life. The theme of the holidays this year for the rabbinical staff is God. Relationship with God. Good, bad, whatever. But all of us need to see take a look at our relationship with God, however you understand God. And of course, it's about redemption. According to Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik, who was a big rabbi, big. He was really the founder of modern Orthodoxy in America. He said redemption happens when humble humans allow themselves to be confronted and defeated by a higher and truer being, or, as I like to say, a higher truth. As we move into 5778, let's dedicate ourselves to confronting higher truths. There are times when we're going to defeat it, but let's look at how often we actually join with it. That's the prayer that I offer to all of you. That's the commitment I make for myself and for Beit Shuvah, that we're going to continue to confront and be confronted by higher truths. And please God, most of the time, allow ourselves to be defeated by them. And in that way, 5778 will transport us to a whole new level of existence. L'shana tova tikatevu. May it be a good year for everyone. May we all be written in the book of good living. And we do that writing. And most of all, may it be a sweet, sweet year for all of us. Shana tova. I'd like to ask, wait a minute, what's next? Hold on. Don't we do candles? I'd like to ask Annette and Harriet and Haley to come up and light the candles for Yom Tov. Right over there.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu להדליק נר של יום טוב.
On page 6, Max is coming up as I read the reading. Our master, Rabbi Chaim of Zanz, told this parable. A man had been wandering about in a forest for several days, unable to find the way out. Finally, he saw a man approaching him in the distance. His heart was filled with joy. Now, I shall surely find out which is the right way out of this forest, he thought to himself. When they neared each other, he asked the man, "Brother," all of a sudden these brothers, right? "Brother, will you please tell me the way out of the forest? I've been wandering about here for several days and I'm unable to find my way out." Said the other person to him, "Brother, I do not know the way out either. Oi. For I too have been wandering about here for many days. But this much I can tell you. Do not go the way I have gone, for I know that's not the way. Now come, let us search for the way out together." Our master added, "So it is with us. The one thing that each of us knows is that the way we have been going until now is not the way. Now come, let us join hands and look for the way together."
Hi, I'm Max. I'm a grateful member of this community. Paulo Coelho said, "When we least expect it, life sets us a challenge to test our courage and willingness to change. At such a moment, there is no point in pretending that nothing has happened or in saying that we are not ready." I have been wandering aimlessly for an extensive amount of time without any help. I did not know the way out, and I kept going in the same direction, expecting different results. In my worst lows, I found myself depressed, not having a home, ruining jobs and relationships. Even ending up in jail after a 6-month psychosis was not enough of a rock bottom to get me to stop. It took an emotional bottom of not having any friends left, seeing people I grew up with die, and breaking down emotionally in a way I never believed possible. I felt that I knew what was best. I assumed I knew the path, however, I could not do it alone. I do not know what is best for me. I have to be open to taking direction, collaborating, and not being completely self-reliant. It is a test of humility that does not come easy to me. I am absorbing wisdom from others' mistakes without having to make those mistakes myself. It is not about knowing where I'm going. It is about the journey and having a faith in God that I have rejected my entire life. My fellow travelers at Beit Teshuvah have begun to find their way out, but now we must help each other discover our new path. The house is now my forest, and I do not have to do this unaided. I have burned down many trees during my addiction, and now it is time to replant. The one thing that I know is that the way I've been going until now is not the way. The one thing I know is that I need help. Thank you.
Continue on page 9. The cantor and choir lead us in the Ma Tovu. Shana Tova, everybody. Still trying to get the lay of the land here. I'm nervous about this fire. This fire is always a test. It's great to be here with you. It's wonderful to be welcoming this new year with you. As I was preparing for the holiday, I was doing some reading, and I came across a quote by Rabbi Abraham Twersky that resonated with me. I'd like to share it with you. Twersky said about Rosh Hashanah, this holiday when we commemorate and celebrate the creation of the world, he said, "A created universe connotes an intent and a purpose by its creator. In a universe that is purposeful, all life can have meaning. And in a meaningful life, there is an obligation to achieve one's purpose in creation." And that really spoke to me when I read it, this idea that when we believe that things aren't just random, that there's a larger purpose, there's a larger why in this universe that imbues each one of us with a unique obligation and a unique responsibility for how we live our lives. That, of course, raises a question, though, which is, what does it mean to live a meaningful life? How do we define that? When I think about creating a life of meaning, what does that look like? And I've been reading this really interesting book. It's called Finding Meaning in an Imperfect World by an Israeli philosopher named Ido Landau. And what he did in this work, he broke it down in a way that was very helpful for me. When I think about living a meaningful life, I've previously thought of it in very black or white terms. Either I'm living a meaningful life or I'm not. And what Landau lays out is that there's a broad spectrum, right? Most of us don't live lives that are always completely meaningful, every single moment, meaning, more. And most of us, fortunately, don't live lives that are totally devoid of meaning. Right? Most of us have had moments. There are times when we experience meaning, when we see that there's value. He talks about value, that there's value in our lives. And so then the challenge isn't, how do I live a meaningful life, capital M, capital L, but how do I create more meaning? How do I find more opportunities for enhancing the value and meaning of my life? And Twersky recognizes in his quote, he says, all life can have meaning. He recognizes it's not a given. It's not a given that we will live meaningful lives, and it's possible. And so what I'd like to encourage you to think about moving into this service and into this new year is to reflect back on the past year. Where have you found meaning in your lives? What's been meaningful to you in this past year? And moving into this next year, how are you going to build on that? How are you going to create more meaning in your life for yourself, for the people you love, so that we can continue to live up to this obligation that we all have to create that meaning and to see the larger purpose in our lives and to continue to help ourselves and each other find that and build on that and enhance that? We recognize and we celebrate this possibility as the cantor leads us in the Shehechianu, a prayer that celebrates the fact that we are here today. The uniqueness of this moment can be found on page, oh, there's no page number. It's found on a page. I don't know what it is.
Baruch atah Adonai,
Holy One,
Eloheinu melech haolam.
presence fills creation.
You bring us here. Baruch atah Adonai,
Holy One of
Eloheinu melech haolam.
presence fills creation.
You keep us here. Shehechianu, King Emanu, Vechigianu, Lazman Hazeh. Shehechianu,
Us alive,
Vechigianu,
sustaining our lives.
Vechigianu, Lazman Hazeh. Holy Lord, bless you. Your presence fills creation. You bring us here. Holy Lord, bless you. Your presence fills creation. You keep us here. You keep us alive, sustaining our lives, helping us reach this day. You keep us alive, sustaining our lives. Las manos
As Meredith comes up to share her thoughts on this reading, we'll read responsively on page 10, The Doorway to a Richer Life. May the door of this synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for fellowship. Your turn. May the door of this synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity. May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness. Amen. Meredith.
My name's Meredith, and I'm a grateful member of this community. When I entered treatment this year in February, I was completely and utterly broken inside. I was homeless, hungry, dirty, shameful, and hopeless. My family had cut ties from me. I only had surface encounters with junkies around me, no deep friendships anymore. I accepted the fact that I was an addict, I would always be an addict, and I would die an addict. I didn't think anyone could help me, and I certainly couldn't help myself. I felt guilty even to take up a bed in treatment for someone that might actually have a chance. But I was tired. I needed a bed. I needed food. I needed a place to stay and clean myself. and I needed a break. I stayed because of that reason. When I got here, I was quiet. I was a sad, sad person, and I really hated myself. The Friday I was welcomed in at Beit Shuvah and I was called to the Bima, I was terrified. I had absolutely no desire to stand in front of you and be judged by you. That's how I felt. But I heard this prayer. I didn't think much of it at the time, but when the crowd bellowed out, "Hold on," I was completely surprised, and I remember smiling at the delight of being caught off guard. That was the first time my face had made that shape in a long time. This prayer is now my favorite part of the Friday night service, and anyone that sat next to me will back me up on that. I know it by heart, and I love screaming at all the new residents. It brings a smile to my face every Friday night. I could never imagine that I would feel the way that I feel today. I have begun to mend my broken parts. I've found my voice, no longer afraid to speak up. I've found fellowship and made some close friendships here. I've begun to mend my relationships within my family, which I didn't know would be possible. And most importantly, I no longer have the belief that I am destined to die in misery. Somewhere along the way, my desperation turned to inspiration. And I have hopes for a great future now. And I can envision myself living a happy and healthy life, whereas before I never could see that happening for me. I know this year will be better as long as I make it better one day at a time and with the help of a God of my own understanding. Beit Teshuvah has truly, truly been my doorway to a richer and more meaningful life, and it can be for you too. Lashana Tova.
Thank you, Meredith. Now Greg is going to come up. He's going to talk about verses from the psalmist. The righteous will go strong like the palm tree. They will thrive like the cedar of Lebanon, planted in the house of the Lord. They will flourish in the courts of our God. Greg.
I'm sorry, Rabbi, my drosh is on my phone. Just going the environmentally friendly route.
We're live streaming it to all sorts of states. I don't think you have to apologize for using your phone.
He was apologizing to me.
The Sabbath Psalm.
Sorry.
If you've ever attended Friday night services at Beit Shuvah or really anywhere, then you've heard it set to music and claps. I've heard it 100 times and even know the lyrics, but I don't speak Hebrew and never bothered to look up the translation. Once I did, I thought they read like lyrics to a heavy metal song. It speaks of evildoers doomed to come and ultimate triumph. I was slightly intrigued, so I put on my favorite Black Sabbath album and did some research. Some attribute this psalm to Adam, stating that it was composed by him on the first Sabbath of creation, saving him from a decree of instant death. Pretty cool. Later, the rabbinical tradition attributed the psalm to Moses. Regardless of who wrote it, the Sabbath psalm is essentially a song of praise and gratitude to God. On Shabbat, when this psalm is typically sung, God removes our shortcomings and defeats our foes, only for them to steadily creep back into our lives throughout the week, to be defeated again next Shabbat. In order for the psalm to make sense to me, though, I had to replace the words God and Lord with a word I could understand: connection. Upon rereading it, it clicked. If a religion is a vehicle for connection and identity, then this is a song about how important it is to stay connected, how being part of something instead of apart from can subdue your enemies and your foes. I use the word subdue instead of destroy because I don't think my enemies can ever be truly eliminated. They will always be there, just like I will always be an addict, but that idea doesn't really scare me anymore. My enemies aren't other people. They're not other tribes, nations, or non-believers, as they may have been to the original psalmist. My enemies are my disease, my self-will run riot, my selfishness, seeking connection to others after a life spent hiding, helps keeps these things in check. The Sabbath psalm concludes with, "The Lord is just, my rock, in whom there is no unrighteousness." I've always defined myself in terms of being against the rock, anti this, anti that. I've strayed from the rock, even fought it. However much I do, I'm the one who ends up with bloody fists. Here, I'm relearning how to connect, how to recover together from the sickness of isolation that shrouded my life like a thick fog. I spent so much of my life alone and being anti-things and thinking that being a part of anything was just uncool. I remember the first time I did heroin. It felt like a warm hug. I think I just wanted to not be alone. I'm finally getting that. L'Shana Tova.
Now continue with Tzadik HaTamar, sung by sextet. Noah's going to come up in a moment, share his thoughts on If You Look at the Stars on page 16. Praise me, says God, and I will know that you love me. Curse me, says God, and I will know that you love me. Praise me or curse me, and I will know that you love me. If you don't praise and you don't revile, then I created you in vain, says God. Noah?
Noah, I'm a grateful member of this community. The rabbi threatened violence if I didn't write something. So here's proof that I wrote it. I don't promise I'm going to read it straight from here, but I did write something. When I first read this, what really came to mind was my own journey in defining God and defining a higher power, which was something that was really, really important to me. And for me, it started on the journey of defining what God wasn't to me. You know, God wasn't a kid with an ant farm or some Greek god toying with me. And that was a really big step for me because it allowed me to let go of a lot of trauma and kind of move forward. But honestly, one of the biggest things that happened was actually sitting in a session with Matt over there. And he gave me a page that had the 49 different names of God on it. And I went through it, and to be honest, I had a really hard time swallowing a lot of them. But one that really spoke to me was Echad, which is one or oneness. And for me, that became my definition for God and for a higher power, my connection with those around me. That idea of this like singular energy, that singular, that feeling that you get when you're at a concert and you kind of look around and you can tell that like everyone's hair on the back of their neck is sticking up at the same time, and that connection that you feel with everyone.
So, the reason why I say this is when I look at that prayer, what it says to me is that my connection to everyone really matters, and that the biggest crime that I can commit is fooling myself into thinking that every word or every action doesn't have a lasting effect on those around me. Now, obviously, it is better for me to do good, to bring love and to light and praise to those around me. But if the opposite happens, if I curse or revile but remain engaged, I can return and correct my wrongs. It makes me think of the fact that, anyone that I've ever told myself that I truly hate, before that, I had to truly love them. And for me, that's what it's all about. It's about staying engaged. Even if I hit a point at times of apathy, as long as I'm angry that I'm apathetic, I'm still engaged, and that was the most important thing for me reading this prayer, that, everything that I do, everything that I say is going to matter. And even if I don't do it perfectly, as long as I accept that I'm connected to those around me, that's all that matters. So, Shana Tova. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. We rise together as one for the Baruch Hu, the call to prayer, page 18. Seated. We continue with Ma'ariv Aravi.
Ya la la la, la 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 la, ya la 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 la, la la la, ya la la la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, la la la. With the word, evening is spoken. With the word, our floodgates open, and our stars have been aligned. Yours to sparkle, mine to shine. Uma vio, Laila, uma deal benyo, moving Laila. Uma vio, maybe Laila, uma deal benyo, moving Laila.
Moving light away from darkness, and darkness away from light. It's the sacred separation. Only if we know darkness can we know elation.
Vio, maybe Laila, Umabdil ben Yom, Laila. Umabdil, maybe Laila, Umabdil ben Yom, Laila. seems the season spilled into time forever filled, walking, weaving into spinning, until we are standing still. My Viyom, Umelila, Umatil Ben Yom, Umelila, Umatil Umelila, Umatil Ben Yom, Umelila. Baruch Atah Adonai Hamariv Arai.
This next prayer, the Ahavat Olam, talks about God's deep love for us, the way in which God has provided us with a way of living, with actions we can take to stay connected with God's love. Coming up to share his thoughts on that will be Zach. Come on up, Zach.
Hi, I'm Zach. I'm a grateful member of this community. I hold the responsibility to create my own commandments and truths to stay close to God and see the godliness in others. I turned my back on God and humanity. I lived in dishonesty and selfishness. I stole from and hurt everyone who cared about me. I didn't care as long as I stayed high. I would post my girlfriend on Craigslist as a prostitute and rob the victims that took the bait. I risked her life and my own. I was unable to love anyone as much as I loved heroin, as long as I got my end fix. Everyone was expendable. I drained my spirit and lost touch with who I was. I will never be able to fully clear the wreckage of my past, but I can make sure not to make the same mistakes again. Saying I strayed away from the path of God is an understatement. It wasn't that God wasn't there or didn't love me. I made the decision to dismiss his love and walk my own path. This path was a dead end. Now it is up to me to make things right, to be present in the lives of those around me and to welcome God's love. I must break out of selfishness and live in selflessness by having awareness outside of myself and offer a hand to those in need, to stop indulging in my own problems, but helping someone else through theirs. God is looking to connect with me as much as I am looking to connect with him. But to find God, I must walk the same path as him, in actions, not in words. Once I walk the path of godliness, I will become one with him. This prayer, Avat Olam, tells us God's love is always there. However, it is our job to connect with that love. Once we walk down the path of good and stay in truth, we have nothing to fear. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. We meditate and think about that love as we continue with the Avat Olam duet. The words can be found on page 20.
Nasir ונשמח בדברי, ונשמח בדברי, תורתך ומצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו ויארך ימינו ובהם נגד יומם בלילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו, ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו, ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה Adonai, Ohev Amo, Yisrael.
In a moment, we'll all chant the Shema together. The Shema is a prayer that affirms oneness, affirms unity, similar to what Noah was talking about a few moments ago. And there are times, probably more often than I'd like to admit, when I feel very disconnected, when I do not feel connected to something larger than me, when I do not feel connected to anything at all. And so then there's the question, how do I reconnect? How do I bring myself back into connection? I found an interesting way to do this recently. I don't know how many, has anyone here seen those photos from Cassini, the satellite that was orbiting Saturn for all these years? You guys seen that? There's this amazing photo taken from the perspective of Saturn, essentially, with Cassini's camera facing back towards the inner solar system. And you can see Saturn's rings, and you can see this tiny blue dot. Us, right? That's Earth. And there's something about that image, that sense of, even though it could bring up a feeling of insignificance, right? Oh my God, we're all just on that tiny blue dot. There's something in that stirs within me that sense of connection and a sense of how much more there is in this world than just me, which in turn makes me feel more connected to everything around me, which in turn makes it easier for me to connect to that possibility for meaning that I was talking about earlier. So as we all say the Shema together, I'd ask us all to think about what are the ways in which we can connect, what are the ways in which we can feel the oneness that we all share. The Shema can be found on page 22, followed by the chant of the V'ahavta.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha ub'chol nafshecha ub'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta b'ham V'shivtecha b'veitecha ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאור על ידך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך.
Now Mike will come up and share his thoughts on the Via Hafta.
Before July 8th, 2017, I was two different people. There was the man I showed you, the man with the career, the car, the seemingly normal life. Then there was a man on the inside, the man who did everything in his power not to be seen. His sole obligation was to keep those outside appearances intact. A man who believed, if it looks good, then it is good. He had learned that to love is pain, and pain is weakness. Walls were put up, and defenses were put in play. I began to believe if I acted the right way, society would accept me. If I said the right thing, I'd be believed. My only obligation was to myself. My only focus was to look good on the outside while staying numb on the inside. There was no room for God because I was in control. Today, this prayer challenges me to be one man, a man whose actions match his words, a man who takes the next right step no matter who's watching. It's said that one's love for God can be determined by the love he bears towards others. Every day I have a new opportunity to show that love through genuine connection, allowing my fellows to see and love me for who I am, and in return, loving them for who they are. Shana Tova.
Now Rabbi Mark is going to introduce the Lo Taturu.
Matt's trying very hard to imitate Moses being slow of speech. So, the third paragraph of the Shema is one of my favorite. Everybody does the Via Hafta, and but the third paragraph talks about fringes, that we wear fringes. Actually, it's not even, we have taluses that we wear during the day and then on Kol Nidre. And the truth is, the fringes are supposed to be on our outer garments, corners of our coats. Because, I think God knew that if we're wearing the tallis, of course, then we're aware of it and everything else. And so, of course, nothing bad would happen and we'd be mindful and all these things. But if we're walking along the street and we're thinking about doing something, shall we say, not exactly at our highest level, then the tzitzis from the coat that we're wearing fly up, hit us in the face, and say, "What are you doing?" It's why we don't put them on our outer garments when we walk around every day, because who wants to be reminded, right? And then it's got this great line, Lo taturu et levavchem v'et einechem asher zonim achareihem. Don't scout. Don't be a scout. Don't scout after your heart and your eyes, because you will whore after them. That's the literal translation. I, of course, would never say a bad word in mixed company. So, but the deal here is, in really what happened was, I don't even know who wrote it. I think it was James, right? And Laura, they wrote this this tune, Lo Taturu, don't be a stranger. So my friend and teacher, Rabbi Ed Feinstein, said, this verse is about be a citizen. Think about this. Be grounded in your life. It's easy to be a stranger, to be a tourist, because you go see something and then, oh, well, I can go on to the next place and go on to the next place. And many of us live our lives like that. We live relationships like that. And The hardest thing, or the most challenging thing for most of us, is to really be a citizen, be engaged, care about what's going on, stand up for what you believe in, and really, really, really stay connected. So we have this song, Lo Taturu. Who's doing it? Kobe.
Don't be a stranger like a man without a home. Don't be a tourist like the words without a poem. Settle down, find a place, be reminded through the day. Lo Taturu, don't let your eyes lead you astray. Lo Taturu, don't let the tide take you away. I'm reminded of your words as I go through the day, flying free like a bird from cloud to cloud. I hold on to the strings that tie me to your wings, and the journey that I'm on keeps getting stronger. Don't be a stranger like a man without a home. Don't be a tourist like the words without a poem. Find a place, be reminded through the day. Lo Taturu, don't let your eyes lead you astray. Lo Taturu, don't let the tide take you away.
I used to feel lost, like I couldn't be found, like a million pounds of weight was just holding me down. I tried to get up and move on and get back home, feeling like a tourist in the streets with a path unknown, looking for direction in a language unspoken, in a million tiny pieces, but I'm still not broken. Gotta sit back and take the chance to finally listen, to find your place up in the world is the greatest of missions. Don't be a stranger like a man without a home. Don't be a tourist like the words without a poem.
Settle down, find a place, be reminded through the day. Lo Taturu, don't let your eyes lead you astray. Don't let your eyes lead you astray. Don't let the tide take you away. Don't let your eyes lead you astray. Don't let your eyes lead you away. Don't let your eyes lead you astray. Don't let the tide take you away.
Give it up one more time for Kobe and Jeremy. So this next prayer is the Micha Mocha. This is a prayer of celebration. These are the words that we said as we left Egypt, as we crossed the sea. These are the words of freedom. And at its best, that's a huge part of what this holiday is about. This is a new start. This is a new year. We have the opportunity, we have the gift, we have the possibility of doing things differently in a way we haven't before. We don't have to be enslaved to the old ways. We don't have to stay stuck in the same patterns. We don't have to be in those ways of being that there is no meaning, there is no value. This year, it's the opportunity to make a change. And as we sing this song, as Cantor sings the song, as the choir sings this song, this is the time to celebrate a new way of being, to celebrate that God is giving us this chance, we're giving ourselves this chance to do things differently and to live free. The Micha Mocha, it's on page 29, Song of Celebration. Now David is going to come up and share some thoughts on the Hashkivenu prayer.
Hello, I'm David. I am and will always be a grateful member of this community. 12 years ago, I tried meth for the first time, and I was quickly addicted. 4 years ago, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. I guess I was addicted to that too. 2.5 months ago, I was still addicted to meth. Meth is one of the few drugs that kills cells in the brain and has no ability for the brain to cure or repair the damaged cells. Parkinson's is a lack of dopamine in the brain, and it impairs motor skills that we so commonly take for granted. The simple tasks of brushing my teeth, lifting objects, or writing my own name are accomplished with some difficulty. My right side tremors, and I walk with a limp. Did the use of meth cause the Parkinson's? I can't say for sure, and neither can the doctors. No one can answer that question, but I can tell you one thing. I most likely brought it on early, because the two are probably part and parcel with each other. I believe that I had an early onset of Parkinson's due to substance abuse. Just so you know how deep I was in my addiction, even with the Parkinson's diagnosis and the information I had read regarding the degenerative nature of the disease, I continued to use. In short, I was writing my own death certificate. When my daughters brought me through the double doors of the white building on Venice, I didn't know that I would be brought closer to the God I had once abandoned through a life of tragic events. I didn't know how to practice spirituality or the word faith. In my first 2 weeks, I struggled, feeling I didn't belong, and I thought I was being punished for my mistake. I felt resentment to the ones that put me there, not knowing that their actions were really out of love. Then something magical happened. I saw God in the gentle, highly intelligent demeanor of Harriet. I saw God in Rabbi Mark's somewhat rough demeanor, which I knew was really just a host to a caring and loving heart. That is the essence of Beit Shuvah. Through the arms of the people of Beit Shuvah, I discovered that I am being held in the arms of God. I am moved, and I find purpose and meaning in my life as I walk down the path of the names of countless of others who have walked before me. I'm inspired by those who celebrate years of sobriety and overcome obstacles far greater than mine. I'm deeply touched by the amount of people that give of themselves to help others. I'm grateful to all those associated with Better Shuvah and those who are committed to my sobriety just as much as they are committed to their own. I thank God for my daughters, Mandy, Marissa, my son-in-law, Frosty, and I'm also thankful for Avia, if she's here, who was a classmate of my daughter's, and lend a helping hand getting me into Beta Shuvah. Little did I know that this intervention would not only change my life, but would change the lives of all those affected by my addiction. So thank you.
Thank you, David. The cantor and the choir will continue with the Hashkivenu prayer found on page 30.
Say to
cantor continues with the Chatzi Kaddish on page 34.
יתקדש ויתקדש שמי רבו ביומם דיברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ובזמן קריב ובזמן קריב ויאמרו Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabba Mevorach Leolam Ulamei Amaya Yitbarach Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitoromam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitale V'yitalal Shmei Dekudesha Prichu La'ela U'leila Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tu Ashbechata V'nechamata Damiran Be'alma Damiran Be'alma V'imru Amen.
Continue with the Adonai Svatai Tiftach with the cantor and the choir together.
Everyone, please rise.
Adonai, Svatai Tiftach, Ufiagi, Tehilatecha, Adonai, Svatai Tiftach, Ufiagi, Tehilatecha.
Sing with us. Svatai Tiftach, Ufi Yagid, Tehilatecha, Tehilatecha, Adonai, Svatai Tiftach, Ufi Yagid, Tehilatecha. Open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Adonai. Svatai Tiftach, Ufi Yagid, Tehilatecha, Adonai, Svatai Tiftach, Ufi Yagid, Tehilatecha.
Remain standing, remain standing. You could choose to sit after Rabbi Matt.
No pressure. You're hearing from a lot of different voices tonight. You're hearing from myself, you'll hear from Andy in a minute, you're hearing from Rabbi Mark, you're hearing from the cantor, you're hearing from the choir, you're hearing from some of our residents. And so what I'd like to encourage you to do over the next few moments is to try to hear your own voice. The words of the Amidah, if you'd like to say the words of the Amidah, can be found on pages 26 through 48. And it's certainly possible to hear our own voices through the words of the Machzor. And if you're not going to do that, whether you stand or whether you sit, I'd encourage you to take these next few moments to look within, to find whatever it is that your best self, your inner self, the godly part of you is calling out to you for this year to come, what you're leaving behind in this old year and what you want to build, what you want to create, the value you want to bring out in yourself and in the world this year. So whether you use the words of the prayer book or you look within and reflect the words of your heart, take the next few moments, whether you stand or whether you sit, to listen to your own voice. And in a few moments, the cantor and the choir will continue with the Elohai Nitzor on page 46. But for now, listen to yourself.
Whenever you're ready, please be seated.
Adonai, Adonai, Adonai.
Shana Tova, everyone. Gave me the chills. I am so honored to be here. I'm so honored to be here celebrating the beginning of this new year with all of you, with Beit Tshuva. The past few months have been a whirlwind of new experiences and tremendous changes for me and my family. In May, I was ordained as a rabbi from the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York City. In June, our son Simcha was born. I thought that would get a better applause. At the end of July, I moved to Los Angeles before my wife Michelle and our son Simi, so that I could establish a home for us here. Not to mention the fact that I started working at Beit Tshuva in August. All of that is to say that I bit off a lot this past summer. Over the course of 4 months, our little family has undergone 4 major life transitions. It goes without saying that each of these transitions has built upon the previous, and each has complicated the ones that come before. It hasn't always been the easiest. And I'm here to share with all of you tonight that I have never been so overcome with gratitude. Gratitude for this wonderful community, gratitude for my inspiring colleagues here at Beit Tshuva, gratitude for our friends and family members who helped us through each of these successive transitions. But most importantly, I have gratitude for my caring, supportive, beautiful, loving, and dedicated wife, Michelle. For whom I know I would not be here without. I could not be here without. You are my light, you are my love. You inspire me daily, and you're the best mother in the world. I love you. I haven't even gotten to the good part. Finally, I have gratitude for God. Because I know in my heart of hearts that I would not be here today with all of you if it were not for the mostly gentle hand of God in my life. I know that without grace, providence, and divine intervention, I might never have finished rabbinical school. I might never have found myself. I might never have been able to be present here, now. As the psalmist writes, Zeh hayom asa Adonai, nagila v'nismecha bo. This is the day that God has made. Let us rejoice and celebrate in it. And I have a tremendous amount to be thankful for and rejoice for in this world. But I didn't always see life that way. I didn't always understand just how God and my experience intersect. I don't always feel totally comfortable in my relationship with God. I wasn't always so sure that God existed. And I don't know if I cared. So when Rabbi Mark told Rabbi Matt and myself about a month ago that our high holiday sermons were going to be about our personal relationships with God, I nodded and smiled. And I figured that I had close to a month to figure out just what I was going to say tonight. The problem of untangling my relationship, my very complicated relationship with God, seemed to be something that I could handle, tomorrow. And as I wrote countless false starts to this sermon, including a full 12-page draft that Rabbi Mark and I tore apart yesterday, I realized that I was scared to write down my actual personal struggles with the divine. I was scared to share myself with you tonight. You see, it's a lot easier to write about the idea of a thing and not the thing itself. So here it is, Rabbi Andy Markowitz's theological journey, trials, troubles, triumphs, and transformations. So I look to the Bible. I look to our received tradition to find a rough analog for how my relationship with God has developed over the years. And I'm drawn to Moses. Moses, the child of Hebrew slaves, saved by Pharaoh's own daughter, raised as a prince in the palaces of Egypt, turned exile and fugitive after killing an Egyptian taskmaster, beating a Hebrew slave. Moses was able to remake his life as a simple shepherd in the deserts of Midian. He had a wonderful family, a good career, a life for himself. He was content with his lot. He was content for everything to stay the same. He was comfortable. He had everything he wanted. And then, all of a sudden, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire out of a bush. He gazed, and there was a bush aflame, yet the bush was not consumed. Something happens that shakes his very foundation. The way the universe operates, bushes burn, they're used up, is flipped on its head. He's confronted with something he cannot understand. Somehow this moment is different than all of the other moments that came before. The sight of the burning bush causes a fundamental shift in the way Moses understands the universe, understands the way he can exist in the world. The bush serves as that liminal moment, that transition where nothing that follows can ever be the same as what came before. When God appears before you, you have two choices. You can listen or you can run away. For me, that moment happened close to 4 years ago here at Beit Tshuva. But my Beit Tshuva story begins close to 7 years ago when a friend of mine who knew that I wanted to be a rabbi handed me Rabbi Mark's memoir, The Holy Thief, right before Yom Kippur. And I spent that Yom Kippur reading Rabbi's story of going from darkness to light, from missing the mark to redemption and tshuva. Indeed, Rabbi Mark's story has become standard Yom Kippur reading in the Markowitz household. So when the chance to spend a long weekend at Beit Tshuva learning from someone who had become my teacher from afar appeared, I jumped at the opportunity. And so I, along with a few of my classmates from New York, came to Beit Tshuva for a few days of learning and growth. And while there, we spent time learning with and from the residents and staff of Beit Tshuva. There's one moment that stands out as my burning bush moment, as the moment that all of this, my relationship with God, my relationship with myself, my relationship to the world, fundamentally changed. That Shabbat afternoon, I spent out on Shirley's patio learning with a young woman coming off of a heroin addiction. At first, we studied in Chavruta. We studied text together. And like all good Chavrutot, the text that we were learning fell away and our souls became the text. We became the text for one another. And as I sat there across from a young woman roughly my own age, pulling herself out of the depths of her addiction, it occurred to me that we weren't all that different. Even though I wasn't addicted to heroin, the things that she said about herself echoed in the deepest recesses of my soul. I found myself resonating with her shame, her joy, her story, our story, the human story, a story of connection and distance. and I felt an obstruction in my worldview that I didn't even know was there shatter. The thing that made me feel very, very safe fell away. And that was terrifying. It was heartbreaking. And as I later learned, it was ultimately freeing. I didn't know it then, but that young woman and that conversation served as my burning bush, as my divine emissary. For after that conversation, nothing was ever the same. I wasn't the same. The world wasn't the same. I remember coming home after that trip crying my heart out at the kitchen table with my wife Michelle, exclaiming just how broken I was, just how broken I am, just how much pain I lived with and in ignorance of, and just how far I felt from God, just how far I felt from myself. With Beit Tshuva's help, I had realized the depths of my own self-loathing and shame. I had come to realize my own addictions, and all I wanted to do was run away and hide. It wasn't until later that the words of the psalmist became totally clear to me. Karov Adonai lanishbarei lev. God is close to the brokenhearted. It's when we're in our deepest, darkest places. It's when we're most vulnerable, when we want nothing more than to run away from God, truth, others, and ourselves, that we are most open. That we are most open to encountering God. Just like Moses at the bush, we have the choice to run away, to run from, or towards God. Indeed, Moses' first impulse, once given his charge by God to return to Egypt and free the Israelites, was to say, Mi anochi, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? The chutzpah, the audacity, Moses' ability to look God in the face and say, no, thank you, might appear at a glance to be an act of humility or modesty. I read this moment as an act of self-deprecation, an act of self-loathing. He genuinely doesn't believe that he is the right person to go and serve God because of where he comes from, because of experiences, because of his shame. He's being asked to return to Egypt, to return to the place of his birth, to return to the place of his shame, and he is unwilling. Moses is so unwilling to trust in God that he resists. He refuses no less than 5 times. Each excuse building on the last, until finally, Moses implores that God go find someone else, anyone else, to go to Egypt and free the Israelites. So too did I leave my encounter with God at Beit Tshuva with a feeling of shame, feeling of unwillingness, and a feeling of fear. I realized that I was afraid of everyone and everything. I was afraid of my shame. I was afraid of other people. I was afraid of myself. It was at this moment that, much like Moses, I had a choice. Either I could run away from God and myself and others, or I could lean in to the discomfort. I could use this pain, loathing, and dis-ease as a vehicle for connection and growth. Dr. Brené Brown, renowned scholar on shame, writes, owning our story can be hard, but not nearly as difficult as spending our lives running from it. Embracing our vulnerabilities is risky, but not nearly as dangerous as giving up on love and belonging and joy, the experiences that make us most vulnerable. Only when we're brave enough to explore our darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light. Indeed, it was due to my experience here at Beit Tshuva 4 years ago that I truly began my spiritual journey. I went to my first 12-step meeting later that week. I began to form connections in places I previously thought impossible. Prayer took on new meaning. It wasn't simply an act of going through the motions to satisfy some cultural norm or to assuage my guilt for not praying. Each prayer became an opportunity to connect with God, became an opportunity to connect with myself. My relationship with my wife, Michelle, became, I don't know how else to say it, more real. We've been together since we were 18 and 19 years old, if you can believe it. And this was our first real challenge that we faced together. I needed, and I still need, to do tremendous self-work in order to maintain that relationship. I learned that self-care consisted of things other than binge-watching Netflix and going shopping. We discovered new depths of love and care for one another, and have, as a result, never been closer. I didn't realize it, but I had to learn to love myself before I could demonstrate true love for another person. What's more, my religious practice, my Judaism, carried more weight. Once I leaned into the skid, the practices and traditions that I was learning in rabbinical school took on real consequences. The wisdom and practices of Judaism went from being cultural trappings to vehicles for connection and access to the divine, to others, and to my own being. Over the past 4 years, I have worked to harness the demons inside me as tools for growth and connection. I have sought to find the voice of God in everyday moments, like Abraham Joshua Heschel teaches. Just to be is a blessing, just to live is holy. I seek to be like Moses, who, despite his thinly veiled fear at heeding God's will, he went out and did as God asked. Why? We only need to look at God's response to Moses' first hesitation, his first refusal, his asking of me anochi, who am I? Why me? God tells him, ki ehiyeh imach. God says, I will be with you. I have to admit, I'm still afraid. I'm not sure what God's promise to Moses, I'm not sure that God's promise to Moses always holds true for me in every moment of my life. How do we know? How do we hear God when our burning bushes are all but ash? Being made in God's image, we have the capacity to discern what is right in the world, but we need to allow ourselves to experience what the world has to offer first. And that's the final current chapter of my relationship with God. For this past spring, just as I was graduating rabbinical school, preparing for a week of back-to-back interviews with congregations, schools, camps, and other Jewish organizations that hire rabbis, I received a call from Rabbi Mark saying that there was a job opening here at Beit Shuvah, asking if I might be interested in applying. Goes without saying that I was interested. And at every turn, there were voices telling me why Beit Shuvah was the wrong decision for this point in my life. And yet, when I came back through those doors on Venice Boulevard for my interview, I knew that I had come home. I knew that on some level, God had guided me to the place that I needed to be. In the end, it came down to that feeling. Beit Shuvah is a place where I can feel God in each interaction, in each group, in each Shabbat service. It's a place where I know I am doing God's will in the world. And for that, I'm grateful. It's a place where we all own our full stories and use them as a means to connect, not run away. It's a place where people are finding their burning bushes on a daily basis and leaning in and running towards. Victor Hugo writes in his famous novel, Les Miserables, that to love another is to see the face of God. Well, if there's anything that I've learned on my theological journey, It's that we first have to love all of ourselves so that we might love another, so that we can then find God. Once we're open to experiencing God fully, we never know how, when, or where God will reach out. All we have to do is listen. All we have to do is be open. All we have to do is run towards, not away. And so my bracha, my blessing for all of us as we enter into the year of 5778 is that we all have the ability to own our fears, our shame and inadequacies, so that we might be able to hear God in any moment, in every moment, every day. Shana Tova.
I'll just say briefly, I'm really grateful to have Andy here with us at Beit Tshuva, and not just because... and not just because he's now the new rabbi, so I can push some of the stuff I don't want to do on him. That too, but it's great having Andy here with us. It's a both and. Thanks. See, he gets it. He's quick. I'd like to call up Adina to share some words about gratitude.
I can reach it. Hi, I'm Adina, and I'm a grateful member of this community. Gratitude is a blessing to me because it offers hope in seemingly hopeless situations. Rabbeinu Yonah says that the greatest gift God has given us is the gift of teshuvah, because it is an opportunity for us to repent for our sins while drawing closer to Him and thereby the godliness within ourselves. I'm so grateful that teshuvah is a major staple of Beit Teshuvah. Gratitude is very personal to me. For most of my life, I have lived in fear. Every time my circumstances got rough, I would run and hide in negative behaviors and substances, losing myself entirely. I've been working very hard on living in gratitude rather than in fear. Living in gratitude forces me to look closely at my life and struggles, seeing the beauty in both of these things. Gratitude enables me to look at life as something to live rather than just something to survive, which has been the way I've always looked at it, just as something to survive. And so through the good and hard times of life, having gratitude to God for both experiences, good and bad, represents hope in itself to me. Thank you. Shana Tova.
And in gratitude, we rise together for the Aleinu on page 58.
Does this mean we're close to done?
Yep.
Oh, that's grateful.
L'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'teit gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoyei aratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot adama, shelo sam chalkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol amonam, v'anachnu korim. ומשחבים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. V'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom ha'od yihya Adonai echad.
You may be seated. We're going to continue with the mourner's Kaddish, so all those who are remembering someone, observing a yard site, who are in mourning, please remain standing. If you see someone standing alone, please stand next to them. No one mourns alone here at Beit Tshuva. We continue with the mourner's Kaddish, which can be found on page 64. We say, Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yamechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'gala u'v'zman kariv v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam lo'meil maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shemei dekudsha brichu. La'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav hu yaseh shalom Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen.
Amen.
May the one who creates peace and wholeness in the heavens grant us a measure of peace and wholeness here on earth. We say together, Amen. You may be seated. We're going to have our final drash for the evening. Talking about the verses on page 67. Out of the depths I call to you, O Lord. Hear my cry, O Lord. Be attentive to my plea. To speak about out of the depths, I'd like to welcome up Ian.
Appreciate that. My name's Ian. I'm a grateful member. Grateful for this community. Thanks for listening and staying till the end. Just 4 months ago, I was living in a van in the neighborhood I grew up in, hiding in the darkest corner of my cave of isolation. The level of self-deprecation, misery, and addiction that I had dug myself into kept me from being a part of the society, of my son's life, and of my soul. Every night, while smoking crack alone in my dark van with nothing but candlelight, I would look in the mirror and ask myself, why? Why are you doing this? This isn't you. Look at what you've become. And every morning, as I would come to, I'd forget the pain, the misery, forget the depth of where I'd been. As I would go throughout the day, avoiding people, walking down back streets, trying not to be seen by the people I grew up with, I would think to myself, who are you? What is this existence? Who is this existing within you? I feel like a stranger in my own body and in my own mind. What will pull me out of the pit, this cave of self-imprisonment? And then it happened, a spiritual experience. I saw a gentleman that I got clean with 10 years before, driving a new car with a smile on his face. I called him. He answered the phone. We talked a while, and at the end of that phone call, I had made a decision to save my life. The next 2 weeks was time for me to spend with my son and prepare myself to start a new life, to start the healing process that brought me here today with you. I'll leave you with this. A dim light flickers as I squint, straining my eyes as I peer into the depths of my true soul, illuminating from behind my eyes hope, possibility, wonder. My true self awaits. Thank you.
We continue to cry out of the depths. The words will be on the screen. Please sing along.
Out of the depths I call you, out of
we are certainly blessed with everybody. One of the things that I think is really important for everybody to remember is that the stories, while they're stories of people who are returning from addictive behaviors, as Andy said so well, there are stories. So maybe you don't do heroin, but all of us have a story of our own separation, our own ways of staying separate from God and from others. So we say, Yehi ratzon milfanecha Adonai Eloheinu v'Elahei Avosenu, shetechadeish aleinu shana tova umetuka. May it be your will, Adonai, our God, God of our ancestors, that we are blessed to be new, that newness comes upon us, that we create newness within us. And the year is good, and the year is sweet. Shana Tova, we have apples, honey, and kiddush, and motzi, and bread out. We have baked teshuva challah. If you have not tasted the amazing challah done by Jackie Elkins and her crew, Kobe and Ian leading that crew, you are in for a treat. Shana Tova will be back at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Amen. Thank you, Rabbi Matt. Thank you, Rabbi Andy. And thank you, Cantor Shira, choir, band,